The snow fell in thick, silent curtains outside the warm glow of the cabin as 23-year-old Adelaide Morgan stood in the doorway, clutching a worn carpet bag and trying to summon the courage to meet the man who had agreed to marry her sight unseen. The golden lamplight spilling from the windows created a halo effect in the falling snow, making the simple log structure look almost magical against the darkening Montana sky. She had traveled nearly 1,000 miles to reach this moment. Responding to an advertisement from a rancher named Nathaniel Brennan, who sought a practical wife to help manage his remote homestead. Adelaide had been honest in her letters, perhaps too honest. Her sister had warned, listing her skills in cooking, preserving household management and animal husbandry, but also acknowledging her plain appearance and shy nature. "I am not what men call beautiful," she had written in her careful script. "I am sturdy rather than delicate, practical rather than ornamental. But I can work from dawn to dusk without complaint. And I have never met a cooking challenge I could not master." Nathaniel's response had been brief but not unkind. "I need a partner, not a parlor decoration. If you're willing to work hard and weather the isolation, I'm willing to make this arrangement permanent." It was hardly a romantic proposition, but Adelaide had learned long ago not to expect romance. Her own family had made it clear that her value lay in her usefulness rather than her charms. Her mother had died when Adelaide was 12, leaving her to raise 3 younger siblings while their father worked himself into an early grave on a failing farm in Ohio. When the last sibling married and moved away, Adelaide found herself at 23 with no prospects, no home, and no future beyond accepting the charity of relatives, who made their reluctance to house her painfully obvious. The mail-order bride advertisement had seemed like a lifeline, a chance to finally have a place where she belonged, even if that belonging was based on practical necessity rather than affection. Now, as she stood in the falling snow with her meager possessions, Adelaide tried to prepare herself for the inevitable disappointment in Nathaniel's eyes when he saw her for the first time. She was not the dainty, golden-haired beauty that men dreamed of. She was tall and strong-framed, with capable hands that showed years of hard work and brown hair that never quite stayed in its pins the way a lady's should. The cabin door opened, and a man stepped out onto the porch. Even in the dim light, Adelaide could see that Nathaniel Brennan was exactly as he had described himself, tall and lean, with the weathered look of someone who spent his days outdoors in all weather. He was probably in his early 30s, with dark hair and eyes that were currently studying her with careful assessment. "Miss Morgan?" His voice was deep and steady, neither warm nor cold. "Yes." "Mr. Brennan, I hope I haven't arrived at an inconvenient time." "You're right on schedule." Nathaniel stepped down from the porch and reached for her bag. "Let me help you with that. You must be frozen after the ride from town." As they walked toward the cabin, Adelaide braced herself for questions or comments about her appearance, but Nathaniel seemed more focused on practical matters. "I've prepared the spare room for you," he said as he guided her inside. "We'll have a few days for you to settle in and see how you feel about the arrangement before we make anything official. If you decide this isn't what you want, I'll arrange transport back to town with no hard feelings." The interior of the cabin was surprisingly well-maintained and spacious, with a large stone fireplace radiating heat and simple but sturdy furniture that spoke of careful craftsmanship. Adelaide's practiced eye immediately took in the details: the neatly stacked firewood, the clean but sparse kitchen area, the general sense that, while everything was functional, nothing had received a woman's organizing touch in quite some time. "It's a good home," she said honestly. "You've taken excellent care of it." Something in Nathaniel's expression softened slightly. "I try, but I'll be honest with you, Miss Morgan. I'm a better rancher than I am a housekeeper. I can fix a fence or deliver a calf, but my cooking is barely edible and my attempts at organizing are, well, unsuccessful." Adelaide felt a flutter of something that might have been hope. This was familiar territory, being valued for what she could do rather than how she looked. It wasn't romance, but it was honest, and she had learned to appreciate honesty even when it came without warmth. "Why don't I make us some supper?" she suggested, setting down her bag. It's been a long journey, and I'd like to see what I have to work with in your kitchen. Nathaniel looked surprised, then grateful. That would be welcome. I wasn't sure if you'd be too tired from traveling. I'm never too tired to cook, Adelaide replied, and for the first time since arriving, she felt herself relax slightly. This was what she knew, what she was good at. As she explored the kitchen, Adelaide discovered that while Nathaniel's supplies were basic, they were of decent quality and reasonably well stocked. Within an hour, she had transformed simple ingredients into a hearty meal that filled the cabin with smells that made Nathaniel stop his work and simply breathe in with obvious appreciation. Over dinner, they talked in careful, polite tones about practical matters, the ranch's operations, the harsh winters, the nearest neighbors 3 miles away, the weekly trip to town for supplies. Nathaniel explained that he ran a small but successful operation, raising cattle and horses on land that his father had homesteaded 20 years earlier. I inherited the ranch 5 years ago, he explained. It's a good life, but it's a lonely one. A man can work himself to death out here with no one to share the burden or the rewards. Adelaide understood exactly what he meant. And you need someone who can manage the domestic side while you handle the livestock and land. That's part of it, Nathaniel admitted. But I also need someone who understands that out here, survival depends on both people pulling their weight. I can't afford a wife who's going to complain about the isolation or the hard work. Adelaide met his eyes directly. I've never been afraid of hard work, Mr. Brennan. And I've spent most of my life feeling isolated even when I was surrounded by people. At least here, the isolation would be honest. Something shifted in Nathaniel's expression, a flicker of understanding or perhaps recognition. You've had a difficult time of it, haven't you? Adelaide looked down at her work-roughened hands. I've been told my entire life that I'm more useful than I am ornamental, that my value lies in what I can do rather than who I am. It's not a complaint, just a fact I've learned to accept. And you came all this way to marry a stranger who offered you nothing but more hard work. I came all this way to finally have a place where I might belong, Adelaide corrected gently, where being useful might be enough. Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with an intensity that made Adelaide want to look away. What if I told you that I think you're selling yourself short? Adelaide felt her cheeks warm. I appreciate the kindness, Mr. Brennan, but you don't need to. I'm not being kind. I'm being honest. Nathaniel leaned forward slightly. You've been here for 3 hours, and in that time you've transformed this cabin from a place where a man sleeps between work shifts into something that actually feels like a home. That meal you made wasn't just functional, it was delicious. And the way you looked at my kitchen, assessing what needed organizing and how things could be more efficient, that wasn't just competence, Miss Morgan. That was artistry. Adelaide stared at him, caught off guard by the observation. It's just cooking and organizing. Nothing special. To you, maybe. To me, it's skills I don't possess and talents I can't develop no matter how hard I try. I can teach someone to mend a fence or handle cattle. I can't teach someone to make a simple stew taste like something worth celebrating. He stood and began clearing the dishes, a gesture that surprised Adelaide since most men she knew would never consider such work. Here's what I'm proposing, Nathaniel said. Instead of rushing into marriage based on practical needs, why don't we spend the next few weeks actually getting to know each other? I want to understand what you're capable of, yes, but more than that, I want to understand who you are, and I want you to understand the same about me. Adelaide felt her heart skip. You want a courtship? Even though we came together for practical reasons? I want the chance to build something real, Nathaniel replied. My parents had a marriage of genuine partnership and affection. I've always hoped I might find the same thing, even if I had to go about it in an unconventional way. Over the following weeks, Adelaide discovered that Nathaniel Brennan was unlike any man she had ever known. He didn't just appreciate her cooking and organizational skills. He was genuinely interested in how she did what she did and why she made the choices she made. Why do you add herbs to the bread dough? He asked one morning as he watched her work. It adds flavor and makes the whole house smell wonderful, Adelaide explained. My mother taught me that food should appeal to all the senses, not just taste. That's brilliant, Nathaniel said with genuine admiration. I never would have thought of that. He also insisted on teaching her aspects of ranch work that went beyond traditional domestic duties. Adelaide learned to assess cattle health, to understand the grazing patterns that would maximize the land's productivity, and to recognize the signs of changing weather that could mean the difference between losing livestock and saving them. "You have good instincts," Nathaniel told her after she correctly predicted a storm system that allowed them to move the herd to better shelter just in time. "You read the signs faster than men who've been ranching for decades." Adelaide found herself blossoming under this kind of attention. For the first time in her life, someone was interested not just in what she could do for them, but in how her mind worked and what she thought about the world around them. One evening, about 6 weeks after her arrival, Nathaniel asked Adelaide to walk with him to the ridge that overlooked his property. The snow had finally stopped, and the world was blanketed in white that sparkled under the emerging stars. "I need to tell you something," Nathaniel said as they stood looking out over the peaceful landscape. "When I placed that advertisement, I was looking for someone practical and hard-working. I thought romance and affection were luxuries that practical people gave up in exchange for partnership and security." He turned to face her, his expression serious but warm in the moonlight. "But then you arrived, and you were exactly what you described in your letters: practical, hard-working, skilled. But you were also something I never expected. You were interesting. You were thoughtful. You had insights and ideas that challenged me to think differently about things I thought I understood." Nathaniel reached out and gently touched her cheek. "Adelaide, you've been underestimated your entire life. People have looked at you and seen only a useful pair of hands, someone to cook their meals and manage their households. But when I look at you, I see a brilliant mind, a generous heart, and a spirit that deserves to be cherished, not just utilized." Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes. "Nathaniel, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll marry me. Not because it's practical, and not because you need a place to belong. Marry me because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how extraordinary you are." Adelaide looked up at this man who had seen value in her that she had never seen in herself. "I love you too," she whispered. "But I need you to know something. I'm still going to cook and organize and work hard, because that's who I am. Those things aren't just skills. They're how I show love and care." "I know," Nathaniel said, smiling. "And I'm still going to appreciate and celebrate those things about you. But I'm also going to celebrate everything else. Your quick mind, your dry sense of humor, the way you hum while you work, and the 1,000 other small things that make you uniquely you." They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in town. Adelaide wore a dress she had made herself, not fancy, but beautiful in its elegant simplicity. And when Nathaniel looked at her as she walked down the aisle, the expression on his face told her everything she needed to know about how he saw her. The years that followed were filled with hard work. Yes, but they were also filled with laughter and genuine partnership. Adelaide's skills transformed the ranch in ways that went far beyond cooking and housekeeping. Her organizational abilities helped them implement new systems that increased efficiency and productivity. Her attention to detail caught potential problems before they became disasters. And her innovative thinking about everything from crop rotation to water management made their ranch one of the most successful in the region. But more than her practical contributions, Adelaide brought joy and warmth to a life that had been merely functional before her arrival. She filled their home with music and laughter, with the smell of fresh bread and the sight of carefully tended gardens. She created a space where Nathaniel could not just work and rest, but truly live. And Nathaniel kept his promise to celebrate all of Adelaide's qualities, not just her usefulness. He praised her intelligence when she solved problems he couldn't crack. He laughed at her jokes and encouraged her to share her opinions on everything from politics to philosophy. He made sure she understood that her value lay not in what she could do for him, but in who she was as a person. 10 years after that snowy night when Adelaide first arrived at the cabin, she stood in the same doorway, watching as Nathaniel taught their 3 children how to recognize weather patterns in the clouds. She thought about the woman she had been, someone who believed her only value lay in being useful, who had accepted that she would never be cherished, only appreciated. That woman had been so wrong. "Mama, Papa says you're the smartest person he knows," their eldest daughter said, coming to stand beside Adelaide in the doorway. "Is that true?" Adelaide smiled and pulled her daughter close. "What's true is that your father sees me clearly, all of me, not just the parts that are immediately useful. And that kind of seeing is its own special gift." Later that evening, after the children were asleep and she and Nathaniel sat by the fire as they did most nights, Adelaide reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. "Do you remember what you said that first night?" she asked Nathaniel. "About me selling myself short?" "I remember," Nathaniel replied, reaching for her hand. "You were right. I had spent so long accepting other people's assessments of my worth that I had stopped seeing my own value. I thought that being useful was the best I could hope for." She turned to look at her husband, this man who had seen past her limitations and helped her discover her own potential. "Thank you for teaching me that being cherished and being useful aren't mutually exclusive, that I could be both competent and loved, both practical and precious." Nathaniel pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for teaching me that the most practical thing a man can do is recognize and celebrate the extraordinary in the person he's been, blessed to share his life with." As the fire crackled, and the snow continued to fall softly outside their warm cabin, Adelaide understood that she had found something she had never dared to hope for, not just a place where she belonged, but a person who helped her see that she had always been worthy of belonging, long before she found the courage to claim it. The advertisement that had brought her across 1,000 miles had promised her a practical arrangement based on mutual need. What she had found instead was a love that had transformed not just her circumstances, but her understanding of her own worth. And that transformation, Adelaide knew, was the greatest gift she had ever received. If this story of discovering your true worth through genuine partnership touched your heart and reminded you that being valued should encompass all of who you are, not just what you can do, please share it with someone who needs to remember that they are inherently worthy of love and celebration. Your support helps us continue creating stories that honor the beautiful truth that the right person will see and cherish your full humanity. Subscribe for more tales that remind us all that real love celebrates both our competence and our character, both our usefulness and our uniqueness. Thank you for being part of our storytelling family.